Powered by the Montana Television Network. This is the 5:30 News on Q2, Montana's news leader.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. I'm Russ Riesinger.
And I'm Jeanelle Slade. Tonight, another major twist in an already convoluted Billings murder.
The Billings man accused of killing his wife before he crashed his car into a power pole with her body in the passenger seat has died in jail.
It all started unfolding with the report of a fatal crash on New Year's Eve, then turned homicide the next day.
Q2's Zoe Zandor has been following the story, joins us live from the newsroom with this latest development.
Zoe, what can you tell us?
Russ and Jeanelle, late this afternoon, authorities confirmed that Daniel Shine, the man behind bars for the death of his wife, 72-year-old Celia Shine, is dead after committing suicide while he was in jail. According to Yellowstone County Sheriff Mike Linder, at around 5:15 this morning, a detention officer was making routine security checks and discovered an unconscious male inmate in his cell. Now, when the Montana Highway Patrol first responded to the New Year's Eve crash on Molt Road, Celia Shine was found dead. Her husband, Daniel, was injured. Daniel Shine was arrested the next day at a Billings home. He was facing charges of deliberate homicide and tampering with or fabricating physical evidence and was scheduled to appear today in Yellowstone County Justice Court for an initial court appearance on those charges. Now, I also reached out to Lieutenant Brandon Woolley today with the Billings Police Department because I think some of us are wondering what happens with the homicide investigation now that Daniel Shine is dead. And Woolley said they will continue to fully follow the investigation to completion to try and help family and the community get some, if any, closure. Russ and Jeanelle.
All right, thanks so much, Zoe.
Well, the search for a missing 16-year-old girl who reportedly wandered off from a broken-down vehicle between Billings and Hardin on New Year's Eve is growing.
Law enforcement tells Q2 as witness stories change, the search expands to multiple locations between Billings and Hardin.
Q2's David J. is following this story, standing by with the latest information on the search for Selena Not Afraid. David?
Russ, Jeanelle, investigators interviewed the people who are riding with Selena Not Afraid on New Year's Day and have been searching two other places along Interstate 90 today. Bighorn County Sheriff Pete Big here says the search also moved to include the Toluca off-ramp, exit 484, and exit 491, which he called the washout. Two locations those involved said the van stalled. Big Hair also says that crews continued to search at the rest area, exit 476, where Not Afraid was left with another woman and then reportedly walked into the field. On Wednesday and Thursday, about 100 searched a 3 to 5 mile radius. Big Hair was told that two men and two women in their 20s left because the driver was afraid his van would stall again. When another ride arrived, Not Afraid was not there, and the sheriff says he's getting conflicting stories.
If I was confident, I wouldn't be having them to go back and revisit with them. From conflicting stories from the original interviews and then the second interview, that led us to re-interview them again. When they left the second time, they stalled. She could have maybe got off there. So that's why we're checking that area, just to make sure. Because this is two areas that they stopped before they got to Hardin.
And Sheriff Big Hair says investigators will look at other possible leads, and the official search will end tonight, but he expects family and friends to keep looking in those areas. Jeanelle, Russ?
All right, thanks so much, David.
Well, people living in Montana's smallest incorporated city will have a little more trouble getting their mail.
In the town of Ismay, east of Miles City, a midnight fire destroyed the post office. Local fire crews tell us when they arrived on scene, flames were bursting through the roof. As you can see, the building, estimated to be about 100 years old, eventually collapsed. Later today, crews soaked down the building to make sure new flames didn't spark.
The fire chief tells us U.S. Postal Service representatives were at the scene working on contingency plans to keep mail service operating. Cause of that fire is still under investigation. Well, switching gears, whether it was the snow and cold of February, severe hail and flooding during the summer months, or an early fall winter storm, there's a good chance you were impacted by weather in 2019. The western part of the state hit by plenty of nasty weather patterns. MTN's Russ Thomas takes a look back at the western weather that made headlines last year.
With very few exceptions, most calendar years come with at least one or two memorable weather events. It's not often that we see the number that 2019 brought. After a relatively quiet January, February through mid-March reached historical marks in both snowfall and temperatures across all of western Montana. In Missoula, from the dates February 1st through March 15th, 28.2 inches of snow reported at Missoula International Airport. This is good for the third highest total for those dates behind 1936 and 2014. Kalispell fell just short of their all-time record during the same period, picking up 39.3 inches of snow. Several consecutive blasts of Arctic air brought exceptionally cold temperatures and bitterly cold wind chill values during the 6-week stretch. On March 4th, Missoula dropped to 10 below zero, while Kalispell dropped to 21 below, both of which were in the top 3 all-time cold temperatures in March. Our unusually cold winter set the tone for what was one of the coolest years in the last 2 decades in western Montana. For Missoula, it was the 18th coolest year on record, and for Kalispell, the 15th coolest. When it comes to those summer numbers, Missoula's hottest day was several degrees shy of 100. The city reached 96 degrees on 3 occasions in August. Meanwhile, Kalispell reached its peak of 93 on 3 separate occasions. This, combined with timely rain events, held fire season at bay. Last September brought another historical event, as a winter storm brought several inches of snow to the lower valley floors and 1 to 2 feet of snow in the higher elevations of Glacier National Park. This early season storm brought over 50 wrecks and slide-offs in the Missoula Valley alone. A historic wind event the day before Thanksgiving brought widespread tree and infrastructure damage and numerous power outages in northwest Montana. And we wrapped up 2019 with a weekend of record-breaking days in the 50s in mid-December. As we turn the calendar to 2020, the odds are against having as many historic and near-record weather events as 2019. But Mother Nature always has a way of surprising us in western Montana, so we'll have to wait to see what story she writes over the next 12 months. In Missoula, Russ Thomas, MTN News.
And that was just last year. Joining us now, Chief Forecaster Bob McGuire. Bob, so far the first week of 2020 has been all about the wind, and those wind gusts are just getting stronger.
Oh, yeah, especially tomorrow. They kind of died down today. I think here in the Billings area we had a 25-mile-per-hour wind gust. Yesterday it was 44. And these are our current wind conditions across the state right now. You'll notice eastern slopes of the divide are still a little breezy there, highlighted in red by Livingston, 37 mile per hour. Same thing up there by Great Falls. We had, I think, a 40-mile-per-hour wind today over by Cutbank today, but that's what the current winds are doing. Now look at this. We still have a lot of watches and warnings. Wind advisories. This stays with us in the Beartooth foothills until Sunday morning. 65-mile-per-hour winds expected there. In west central Montana, probably the same deal. You're looking at 50 to 70-mile-per-hour winds in that area. Plus up by Glacier National Park, it's a winter weather advisory. 1 to 3 inches of snow in the valleys, 3 to 6 inches of snow in the passes than everywhere else in Montana. We're looking at winds gusting to 60 to 70, even 90 miles per hour up there by the park. That's a high wind watch in northeastern Montana where the winds are only gusting to 60 miles per hour. Of course, here in Billings, we could see some 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts ourselves here tomorrow. We'll have more about that coming up in a few more minutes.
All right, thanks, Bob. Well, influenza is impacting people in all parts of Montana, and those numbers rose again this week. There were 307 new cases reported for the week of December 29th, 57 of those right here in Yellowstone County. Now, so far this flu season, Montana has seen 789 cases. 46 of those have been hospitalized. No deaths have been reported. Gallatin County has seen the most cases this season with 221. Yellowstone County comes in second with 134.
There is more news from across our state on the MTN 9 o'clock news on the CW. A young politician trying to blaze her own path and change the shape of politics in Helena. Join me for that story and much more tonight at 9 on the CW.
But first on tonight's 5:30 news, the Downtown Billings Alliance is planning on sprucing up Fridays for our community. We'll check it out.
And later in sports, the Grizz basketball men are off to a perfect Big Sky Conference start and collected a nice payout against some non-conference powerhouses. Scott will tell us how much.